Good morning. I'm bringing this session to open the session at 9:03. Could I make sure everybody's checked in for roll call? All right. Meeting practices. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that the board appreciates and supports stakeholder input in our meetings. However, it is important to note that the board meeting is not a meeting of the public, but a meeting to conduct the district's business in public. Everyone should have a chance to express their opinions respectfully within the guidelines the board has established for its meetings so that the board can be able to conduct the business effectively and efficiently. During the meeting, there will be time for public comment on both agenda and non-agenda items. Public comment is only conducted in person. If you wish to speak, please submit a written statement, excuse me, a written speaker card to the executive assistant. Members of the public may observe the meeting via NUSD channel or in person at Newark City Council Chambers. Spanish translation is available. Moving forward to our guidelines, Member Aguiano, can you read those today? I have a list. I have the list of them if you need it.
Yes, thank you. Board meeting guidelines. We will keep our focus on the best interests of our students. We will work towards a future, learning from the past. We will stay focused on our goals and avoid getting sidetracked. We will build upon ideas of others and look for common ground. We will paraphrase for understanding. We will have a difference. When we have a difference of opinion, we will debate the facts of the situation and avoid personal criticism. We will address processes, not persons. We will respect differences. We will never dismiss or devalue others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can we stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, Ms. McDonald, do we have any public comments today? Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda unless somebody would like to pull something.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. And a second, please.
I second.
Thank you. And please vote. Okay, 5 ayes, and student member Torres is absent today. All right, open session. Executive search firm interviews to conduct the superintendent of school search. We are going to have 2 presenters today. With that, each one of you has their RFQ response and their proposal. And you have a set of questions in front of you that these are just things that we would like you to kind of look for and listen. Member Thomas and I got together and came up with some questions for us to look at as and make sure that we get the answers to from the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Leadership Associates. Ms. Horsch.
Thank you very much. Do I press this button?
I gotcha.
You got me? Oh, thank you.
You're
Appreciate it. So thank you for having us. We're excited to be able to present our proposal to all of you. And although you can see me, you can't see my colleague because he was not able to join me today, but he will be with us via the miracle of Zoom. So For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Jackie Horish, and I am a consultant with Leadership Associates. I'm actually a partner, as my colleague Eric is, and you'll hear about that in just a minute. I'm a former superintendent for 9 years, which I think is a pretty good run in San Jose, California. And I've been very active in superintendent searches since I retired. So that being said, I'm going to let my partner, Eric Andrew, introduce himself. Eric, I can't see you, but I'm guessing they can. Eric, are you there? I was telling her that this usually happens. There's always a technological glitch when we try to do this. Eric, can you hear us? Well, while we're waiting to see if he can connect, unfortunately, he was not able to join us today. He had some family obligations in Southern California. So I apologize that he's not here in person to be with you, but he is familiar with the district because he worked on your previous search. So he is very familiar with the district and some of you. Pardon? Eric, can you say something? Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hey, this is Eric Andrew. Hopefully you guys can all see me and hear me. I'm glad to be here this Saturday morning and being able to see some of you again and to introduce myself to the rest of you.
Great. So Eric, could you tell us a little bit about the next slide? I just put it up.
Absolutely, yes. One of the things that you get with Leadership Associates that's different than other firms is that we have dedicated executive assistants who will work with your executive assistant to ensure that we meet all Brown Act rules, that you have the correct language for posting, that we'll work with them to, as we move through the few slides, working on the partners, educational partners who we'll work with. But this person is dedicated to this search. And so it's a very wonderful advantage that we do provide that's different than other search firms.
And Eric, could you tell us a little about, tell the board a little bit about our experience and why we are one of the premier search firms in California?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we do is we have had over 750 searches, and you can see some on the slide, some of the districts that we've been a part of. We're going to talk a little bit more later down the line about our experience, our connections in terms of the number of superintendents, not only that we have placed, but also the numbers that have stayed and those who we continue to work with in leadership development. And so that's one of the other aspects of our firm that's unique, is that we have both a search firm for search partnerships. We also provide leadership for several superintendents and assistant superintendents.
Great. So I'm going to outline just very briefly, and then I'll go into a little more detail. When you take a look at the processes of various search firms, and I know you've had several proposals, they're all going to start blending together because there's a lot of similarities. I think what Eric and I are going to try to do is point out, why are we different? What is it that we do? So in a nutshell, there's really about 4 phases of the search. And the first phase is we start with you. This is your search, and we're going to customize it to what you want to do. So if we were selected, the first thing we would do is we would have an initial meeting with you. So we'll set up a date that's convenient for you, and we're going to outline every single piece of that search. You're going to know what dates we're going to meet. You're going to know when the interviews. You are going to be telling us how you want us to do the search. We have a broad outline, but it's up to you. You control how we do the search. So the next step of the search, and again, just broadly, really has to do with getting input from all of the stakeholders that you want us to have input from. So during that initial meeting, we ask you, Who are your key stakeholders? Who do you want us to meet with? We'll meet with your fire chief if you want. We meet with your sheriff. We meet with all of your parents, your union, your labor partners. Whoever it is that you think it's important to get input from, that's who we will meet with. And unlike other firms, we don't charge by how many we do or how many days it takes us. It's up to you. Our fee is all inclusive. And whatever it is that you want us to do, whomever you'd like us to speak with, we do. We take all that information and we put it together in what we call a position description. So what is it that your broader community wants to see in that next superintendent? And of course, when we do our initial meeting, you're the first people that we talk to find out what you really want to see, because you're boots on the ground. You know what issues are facing the district. But you do want to find out what your other stakeholders are interested in. So we use that to do the position description, and that's what we advertise when we do our recruitment and outreach. And as Eric told you a little bit about earlier, we have a huge network that we outreach to. So you'll see later on in these slides why we can tell you with full authenticity, we'll get you the broadest and deepest pool of candidates. So we do all of that intensive vetting and reference checking, which we'll talk about. And then we will give you all the information in a portal electronically of every one of the candidates. So you'll get to see everything that we see. You'll see all of their paperwork, you'll see their answers to the questions, you'll see their cover letters, you'll see their application, everything electronically. And then we will come to you and we'll say, of the people that have applied, here are those people that we think are most qualified relative to what you're looking for, okay? They have the experience, they have the specific skills that are gonna help them be successful. We call those our tier 1 candidates. Then we give you the next level of tiers, which is tier 2. These are candidates that probably have what you're looking for. They may be lacking something. So let's say that you as a district were looking at major construction. So your tier 2 candidate might be somebody who has all the other pieces. They've got curriculum, they've got business, they have everything, but maybe they don't have any experience in construction, and that's something that your district specifically needs. So those people we would call tier 2. And then there's the tier 3 candidates. Those are people who've applied that we found something about, maybe they have baggage, whatever. And so we let you know what those things that we found out are. But you decide which candidates you want to see. It doesn't matter if we have put them as a tier 1, a tier 2, or even a tier 3. You decide which ones you want to see, and you decide how many you want to interview. So you tell us, we want to interview X numbers of candidates. We set up the interviews, we do all the contacting of the candidates, we facilitate the interviews on the day of the interview. So that's kind of the broad base. And we end up, of course, hoping to find you a very successful superintendent. So this talks a little more about what we do in terms of that stakeholder engagement. We do have an online survey in addition to the in-person sessions. And this is really important because we have found, especially since COVID, we get more information from the surveys, actually, than we do than just the in-person sessions. People are more willing to sit in their bunny slippers with a nice cup of hot chocolate this time of year and fill out a survey. We also have that survey in multiple languages, so whichever languages you need it in, we'll get the survey out. So we then give you, of course, an executive summary of all of the input that we've found. So we've talked a little bit about our recruitment, and one of the reasons that we can tell you why we truly believe that we have the broadest and deepest pool of candidates is because every one of those stars is a partner in our firm. We are vested in this business. We don't just do it as a side gig. We are all partners in Leadership Associates. We also have partners throughout the state. So you're going to get candidates who are coming from other areas, perhaps. We know people that they know. They have probably worked in other districts throughout the state, and so being able to really capitalize on that network of people helps us really get that broad base of candidate recruitment. So Eric, can you talk a little bit about the state and national reach in terms of our organizational participation?
Absolutely. You may have noticed that we are a California-based firm, and that's no question about that. We know California well, as the previous slide indicated. Yet I would tell you that we do have a national search. In all of our searches, we get people from not only nationally, but some cases, most cases, internationally as well. People who left the United States, have gone to teach abroad or be administrators abroad and want to come back. As you take a look at these various organizations, what sticks out to me about it, and what we want you to know, is that many of our partners, and when we say partners, we're talking about we are partners in an LLC. We're not just talking about partners as consultants. We are part of this organization, and this is our firm. But as you take a look at a lot of these titles here, we have many of our members who have been either the executive directors, they have been on the boards of these organizations, and we maintain close contacts with each of these organizations. And so this is another way of how we'll reach out to the various stakeholders and our partners in the field of education to get an idea of, are there any candidates that you would recommend for this position that fit the profile that you're just looking for along the way?
And Eric, along with that, can you talk a little bit about our recruitment strategies in terms of our executive leadership development?
Absolutely. I think I gave you a little prelude to how connected we are throughout the state. And I want you to take a look at some of these numbers in terms of, I mentioned that we do a lot of leadership development. We have over 200 current sitting superintendents who are part of a series in which they're working with us throughout the year on leadership development. What this does, it not only helps them understand leadership, but it also gives us a fresh perspective of what's actually happening in the landscape of education currently. We have 45 districts that are participating in superintendent leadership networks. What that means is these are typically small groups where we provide curriculum and we talk to them about current issues. We often have a problem of practice that we work through with the superintendents, and they work collaboratively to help solve each other's problems, challenges in areas of growth. We talk about successes as well, and how did you get the success in either test scores, in construction, in hiring, etc. And I won't go through each and every one of them, but we really do have our fingerprints on so many different districts, and we work with them to find out what are their needs, and this is how we find out how we can maintain successful superintendents, because they tell us here are the challenges, here are the opportunities for growth, here are the wonderful things that are happening in education, and we want to share that with all districts. So we're very proud of this. We've worked with assistant superintendents. We have a summer institute. We have about 150 superintendents who come annually to that event. And so we really work hard to understand what's going on in the current state of education.
Great, and I just want to put in, I'm starting the Aspiring Superintendent Series. First meeting is next month. So we try to, tap those people that we know are looking for great leadership opportunities. So Eric, maybe you can talk a little bit about how all of this networking helps us in terms of our background check and candidate vetting and everything.
Absolutely. And so one of the things is we talk about the pre-screening. We have a series of questions we ask each candidate before, or each applicant, before we move forward. We want to know, what would your critics say about you? What would your admirers say about you? Why do you want to be the superintendent in Newark? What do you know about the district itself, and so on? So those are things that really give us an insight in terms of the readiness, preparation that the candidate has done in order to be a valid or a viable candidate along the way. We also make sure that, and Jackie mentioned this about the board having access, and that's very, very important. Two things I would use as a caveat, keeping in mind when we give you the applicants' information, their applications, and et cetera, One of the things that you won't have is oftentimes as we go back and talk to our colleagues or talk to people who, for example, a candidate may have 5 people listed as references, but we know 3 other people who know their work very, very well. You may or may not have that same type of information. So there are times when we're doing background checks and vetting the candidates, we'll talk to a reference who has actually given the candidate a decent letter of recommendation, and then we ask them off record, what are some of the things that we need to be touting for this particular candidate? What are some of the things that we need to be concerned about with this particular candidate? We do that by giving you all this information. We have the candidate review meeting where we'll talk about each and every one of the candidates. As Jackie mentioned, the tier 1s, the tier 2s, and the tier 3s. We take a lot of time during that meeting to develop criteria, to look at which of these candidates is the best candidate to move forward in an interview process. We'll work with you with facilitating the interview process. We will work with you with questions, timeline, date, location. In addition to that, what we'll do is with the candidates who move forward, the top candidates you're going to interview, we'll ask them to provide salary. We'll provide your salary comparison, but we'll have them complete what's called a contract parameters. So we make sure that their requests for salary, benefits, et cetera, are in line with what the district is willing to move forward. And so one of the things we would ask if we were selected is to have the board have a discussion about what will be the salary, what will be the benefits, what are there any other perks or conditions that the board is considering, and then we'll help you with the contract with the finalists. And we don't get involved in the contract negotiations themselves, but we help make sure that it's facilitated and that the process is moving forward.
And I just want to add, remember the slide with all the partners listed with the little stars across the state? We meet every other Tuesday, and we talk about the positions that we have available, and we talk about what it is the district's looking for, and then, we popcorn out, do you know any candidates that, would meet these qualifications? And we also talk, as Eric mentioned, we go off the page. If we find out that somebody's got baggage from a former district, the candidate isn't going to put that person down as a reference. So we're able to find out an awful lot about our candidates because of our partners throughout the state. So I don't, for some reason, it's not showing on my screen, but hopefully in your packet of materials in our proposal, you saw the proposed timeline. This was just to show you the steps that we go through. If we are selected, when we meet with you, we'll ask you to bring your calendars, and you will decide when all of these steps are going to happen. So the timeline is really here as a placeholder. I don't know why it didn't show up on the the PowerPoint, but as I said, usually when we do these things, there are always glitches. So I just want to conclude and thank you for giving us the time to present this with some things that we think are really important. Okay, we do really believe that we are going to be able to find you the best pool of candidates to meet your needs, okay? I think we've told you why we think that's true. Our network is incredible. The minute that you would select us, if we would be fortunate enough not to have that happen, we let our assistant, who's going to be working with your executive assistant, we let them know, sign the contract, and it immediately goes out to the 1,500 subscribers that we have. Anybody who wants to be a superintendent knows Leadership Associates. I can guarantee you that. Okay, one of the things, though, that we really strive to do is to meet the diverse needs of all of our districts. Okay, last year, and we keep copious data on this, 66% of our finalists who are selected to be superintendents were either women and or candidates of color. Okay, a lot of boards really feel that having somebody from California is important because we tend to be very unique. So one of the things, as Eric mentioned, we're the California search firm. So we know a lot about California, and we've got a great track record of success with over 750 searches. And we also, as Eric mentioned, we have national candidates. Oftentimes boards are a little hesitant because they may not have experience in California, but we have really had several really highly qualified candidates from out of state. Talked about being partners, how important that is. And we are very, very active in all aspects of public education. So we've got boots on the ground. We know what's going on with the districts. And
In fact, Jackie, to that point,
please.
some of you may have seen us at CSBA,
Yep.
where we had a booth and were present there as well.
And I missed you. I was there yesterday, Thursday? Yeah. I think you probably saw our partners. Anyway, we have an all-inclusive cost, no hidden fee. We have a guarantee. So we appreciate the opportunity and want to see if you have any questions for either Eric or me.
Questions? Member Hill?
Thank you, Ms. Horridge. Just one question for Mr. Andrew. So on your bio, you have a number of credentials and activities, but I had a question about one, and it says you're currently the president of the Region 8 Retiree Charter. And I'm just curious, like, what that is and what kind of time commitment is associated with that. Like, is that a full-time job?
Oh, well, I can just tell you, I recently resigned from that position.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Doesn't take any time.
Yes, as of October 31st.
Member Block?
Thank you both very much for the presentation. Really appreciated learning more about your process. I was curious to hear a little bit more detail about what the educational partner engagement looks like when you conduct those interviews. How does that work? How do you schedule them? I was very impressed to hear that you said like the cost includes all requested sort of stakeholder interviews. So I was just curious to see what that looks like.
And Eric, I'll start and then chime in if, there's something
Absolutely.
that I missed. So when we have our initial meeting with you, you're going to be given ahead of time a list of the most commonly used stakeholder groups, okay? We call them community partners now. And so we ask you to identify which groups and possibly individuals do you want us to meet with. So on that list, there are just the commonly used people, such as speaking with your current superintendent, for example, speaking with cabinet members, speaking with your labor partners, speaking with classified and certificated, meeting with if you have school psych councils, meeting with your parent groups, meeting with your boosters, meeting with, as I said, your city businesses and civics groups, all of those. You decide who it is that we meet with. And we try to, be as inclusive as possible. And then we, with your administrative assistant, we work on scheduling those things. So we generally will give you a time frame. So let's say the week of whatever week you want to do it, second week in January. Here's what our availability is. And so we work with your administrative assistant, who then will send out invitations to these people. So let's say that we're going to meet with the sports boosters. So we don't have access to who those sports boosters are, but the district does. So then we'll say, we'll be meeting with the sports boosters on this day from this time. We do a lot on Zoom. What we have found is that we, get much better participation doing it on Zoom, but we do both. We do both in person as well. We generally do at least 1 to 2 community meetings, which would be in one of your middle schools or high schools, and it's whoever wants to come. A general invitation goes out through the media. We have not had the same amount of participation in that since COVID, honestly, but we do want to offer it in case people want to come. Eric, anything else?
I think that's it, but just one more thing, excuse me, and that is, this is an excellent time for you to reach out to the communities or individuals in your area that maybe have not had a voice in a lot of the participation. And so we will give you a template of the groups and individuals who we typically would ask the board to consider for an interview or input session. However, the board makes the decision in terms of who you want to be a part of it. But I want you to be conscious of the fact that there are oftentimes groups and communities that don't come to board meetings, they don't reach out, and so on. And so sometimes it's best if we give them personal invitations to ensure that they come. And as Jackie said, we do a hybrid. We will be in your district. We also have input sessions online, and so we really try to be as thorough as possible with that. The online survey is where we get a lot of information as well, and we will do a lot of advertising, in terms of asking each of your schools to put the online survey dates on their website, on your district website. It'll be on our website. We'll ask if you have a local newspaper, if you could possibly have them put the dates and times of the online survey. So we try to use as many media streams as possible in order to do that.
And one of the other things I just want to add, we really enjoy getting student input. So we've done it both ways. We do it two different ways. Oftentimes we'll, go to a school and ask the principal to please, get pizza for the kids and, invite whichever, hopefully, representative students that we want. But we also have been doing recently a student survey. It's the same survey that everybody else takes, but we disaggregate it so that you're able to see, well, this is what the students are saying versus this is what, the community at large is saying. And we found that that's very helpful because it's often, getting student voice in, sometimes they have a unique perspective.
Member Thomas.
Yes, thank you both for coming and for your proposal. I'm intrigued about the 200 current superintendents that you have in this leadership group. What is their vested interest? How do you recruit them? How do they become part of your group? What do you do with them? And then how do they serve as resources for districts like us as you search for candidates for us?
Yeah. Eric, do you want to take this? You've done that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things happen. One, we work with county offices and ask if there are superintendents who, if they are interested in having leadership series for their particular counties and so on. And so that's how we've initially put out the word. We also do it through our own publications. We reach out to certain people, and typically I've done a few of them, in fact. And the county office helps support them. We meet typically once a month. We have materials that we do go over, but the most important aspect of it is for the superintendents to have a safe space where they can talk about issues that are going on within their district. An example of that would be, for example, negotiations. You're in a county, you got neighboring districts all around you. You have a chance. Let's have a conversation about, okay, what are you guys going to offer? What are you offering? Are there any nuances to your negotiation practices? Are you part of the leadership labor management institute where there is a structure for your negotiations? Do you do old-fashioned basic negotiations? So they get a chance to really sit and talk earnestly with their colleagues, because superintendent position is a lonely position, and to be able to have people who are in that position work with you, for you to be able to build the capacity of your capacity as well as the capacity within your county is extremely important. And so that's basically what happens. We ask county offices, they bring them together, and we've had them in some of the largest counties, meaning like Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange counties, Santa Clara County. We've done, what did we do, Jackie?
We did, I was just going to say, so you and I did Contra Costa County.
Costa, right, yeah, so we have.
They're doing it as well. So Eric and I aren't doing it this time. One of our newer members, Parven, is doing it. She's a former superintendent. She's doing it with Blanca, I think.
Right, exactly. So that's basically how we structure it, and they come. They're excited to be there. They're active participant, and as I said, the reciprocity is priceless. We get to hear exactly what districts and superintendents are going through, and so that helps us hone our skills in terms of when we're out there looking for superintendents, understanding that this these candidates need to have these skills or be aware of these things that are on the horizon within the county or within the state.
And you know, I think one of the other things, Nancy, a little bit to your question, one of the things that I think we came out with after we did the Contra Costa is there were some newer superintendents in the group.
Yes.
They were able to really learn from some of, you know, the former well, they were current at the time, the superintendents. So you had John, who was in San Ramon. He was able to talk to the group about things that he was doing, and that was so instrumental for the brand new superintendents or even the ones who had less experience. So it's that networking amongst themselves that then they can take these ideas back to the district and say, hey, you know, so-and-so is doing this. What do you guys think about it? I think that's a real important aspect of the leadership series.
Okay, yeah, our time is definitely coming to a close. I do have a question. We proposed a timeline that you responded to in your proposal. I'm assuming that that timeline works for you just
Yes.
fine? Okay, and then my other question was, if we wanted to do a further background verification on the candidate, would you be the one that would be helping with that, or would that just rely on us?
I think it would depend on what level that you wanted. So we don't do criminal checks, for example. They do have to self-identify, you know, if they've been a felon or that.
Okay. Member Hill, like literally, we have about 30 seconds on our time.
Yeah, just quickly. So the slide that you had with your support team, that's going to be behind the scenes working, and I know it was a couple of years ago, but when you helped us a couple of years ago, how many of the people that are on the current support team that you've identified were helping on the prior search? Do you remember?
I think all of them were. Was Linda there?
I don't think Linda was, or she was brand new. She was.
I think we added one more person. We used to have 3, now we have 4.
Okay, but the other ones were here from before.
Yes, Penny
Okay.
and Serena. I don't know who, do you remember, Eric?
I think it was Penny.
Probably Penny.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and coming out on a Saturday morning for us. And we will get back to you with a decision hopefully in the next few days.
Thank you so much. And again, delightful to see you again. And we really appreciate the opportunity to present our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, guys.
Take a look at your question where you're kind of falling on those, please.
Anna, we're on live. We're live.
Yeah, we're online, thank you. We appreciate you being here. We know that you are from Mac Jakes, what I want to say, but McPherson Jacobson.
Right.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you. My pleasure. And, you know, I feel like I'm back to. I've got a history with Newburgh. My very first teaching job was at the Catholic school down the street. I just drove by that. And then I also had family living here. And I was your interim assistant superintendent for HR for a period of time. And in the middle of the pandemic, I helped that board, and I don't think you were on at that time, looking for a superintendent. And that was an interesting experience because it was all virtual, you know. And so, like I say, I feel like I have a heart here in Newark myself. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present. This is briefly what I'm going to go through. Tell us a little bit about who we are, who the team will be, the difference. And you're hearing, I don't know how many different firms you're going to hear from today, but you're going to hear a lot of the same thing over and over. It's just a matter of a variation on a theme, and then also the relationship we build. I'll talk about the 5 phases of our process, your investment, and then the supports we offer you and your new superintendent. So with us, this is our mission statement, and I was rereading your mission statement just before I walked in here. And this is what we do for you to help you inspire and educate the future students here. So that's who we are. We're very well established. We've been around for a while, and we're a national search firm. Now, I'm here from California. I was born and raised in San Leandro over there, so it's not like I got pulled in from the Midwest somewhere or what have you. We have access to consultants across the nation, but we also have a cadre right here in California who we interact with all the time. Nationwide, we have over 130 consultants, and as I've already mentioned, the national recruiters, what have you. We will customize the search to best fit your needs. We have a process, and we will encourage you to do that, but there's modifications in that process that you as a board may choose to address, and we'll work with you on that one. We engage a lot of your stakeholders. Matter of fact, I know at least one of you that we did virtually when we were doing stakeholders the last time, because as I already mentioned, during the pandemic. So we talk to your folks face-to-face, virtually, and they have an online opportunity to give us feedback as well. And we will brag about the number of successful placements we've had. Now you see, these are all the places we've conducted searches. Notice California is the heaviest in terms of what's going on. Part of what we're real proud of is that almost 80% of those that we placed, did I drop that? Almost 80% of those that we have placed in the last 5 years are still in their place for 5 years. 60% have been in place for 10 years, and then 40% for 15 years. And that's critical for you as a board. I'm sure you've already been told this is the most important decision you make. And part of that is you want consistency. You want a leadership that will be here for a while and actually be able to implement your mission and vision and move their district forward. So we pride ourselves on our placement. Dr. Adam Clark, you have 2 consultants assigned to you, but we work with all the California consultants. So even though we have an office staff that supports us, we also have our colleagues that are out there and we work with. Dr. Adam Clark, he's currently the superintendent in Mount Diablo. He has been doing searches with McPherson for about 3 years now. And so he's experienced that. I'm Daniel Moreo. I will be your lead if in fact we are selected. And this will make the even dozen for me if in fact you select us as your firm to go with. So I've been doing this for a while. I've done urban, suburban, rural districts. So I've had the opportunity to do all that. I have been a superintendent, and I've been a state administrator for a district that was taken over by the state. With that, here's what makes us a little different. We do all sizes. There's nothing. I did one search just about a year ago. There was only 300 students in the district, and it was very rural, up in the mountains, what have you. We ended up with 20 plus applicants, which was unheard of for an area like that. A nice area, not to diminish that, but location was a problem. I've already mentioned to you the sustainability of the leadership and the level of stakeholder involvement and bringing them forward. May I ask, I'm taking a medication and it causes me to have dry mouth. Is there a possibility? Thank you. So high degree of stakeholder involvement. And again, we will tailor make the search based on what you need, what you want moving forward. Again, we have a process, but there's modifications you can make to that process. What we pride ourselves also on is transparency. One of the first things we will do with you, after, if in fact we're selected, we'll be working with your point of contact and your technology department to get a space on your webpage that through you, we will keep your community current. We will be talking to each one of you one-on-one and keeping you current throughout the process. We'll develop a timeline in a short time. We work for you. Nobody else. We work for you. We get a lot of people trying to influence us, and we'll listen, but we know you are our boss, so to speak. We've got a lot of partnerships. I myself, CASA, CalAPA, AXA, of course, you probably have heard that one. I'm part of the National Superintendent's Roundtable. I feel like I've got a number of contacts myself, and my colleagues have many more as well. And we do tap into those associations looking for applicants that will fit what you identify as your criteria. And we stand on the strength of our references, and I was sitting back there. I was not trying to watch. We know each other. It was going there. And I noticed that they talked about the references. We, too, do not just go by the ones on the application. We know who we put on the applications. We're not going to put somebody who may say something not so promising about us. But we go deeper. And that's the advantage of us having our other consultants working with us. Because if I don't know somebody in the district where that person's from, one of my colleagues does. And we go and talk to them. And one of the questions we ask everybody when we're doing the reference checks is, who else should we talk to give us some more information? And that causes us to go deeper. And I have to tell you, there's been a couple of times, it wasn't on the application, the reference, but it went deeper. And then we got the stories. And we really need to balance that. One part of what will happen is we will bring to you and let you see the applications of every applicant. We will have honed that down to those that fit your criteria and ones we think you should interview. Obviously, you're going to make the decision as to who to interview, but we will tell you in this day and age, superintendents are moving around a lot. We will tell you if there are any blemishes on that particular person's background. So, so the 5 phases, I'm going to go in those deeper, is phase 1, we'll meet with you. 2, stakeholders, I'll go deeper in just a moment. Look at the applications in phase 3, and then we will work with you to sort the short list of candidates, and your candidate gets selected typically in 8 to 12 weeks. That's a normal timeline. We've had it stretch out. We've also had it narrowed. And then the last time is not, you've selected your candidate and you probably have hired him, but we don't go away. So in phase 1, we will work with you as soon as you identify, and again, obviously we're hopeful it's us, your firm. We will schedule a meeting with you, and I will share that probably in this process, at least with us, we're going to ask for about 3 special meetings because of the work we've got to do. And one of those is to get the desired characteristics of the candidate that you want. We usually have 3 to 5 characteristics, and we put that out with the application, because that's most often what the applicant will write to. It also helps us, as we're screening the applications, we can ask the candidate and we can ask some of their references. So how do you think they would work in this area? Being culturally aware is typically one that we've had a lot. And we ask about that, and where you've been, what do you do, da-da-da-da-da. And we get a lot of information about the connection there. You will help us to identify who you want us to talk to in terms of the stakeholders. We have a typical list we will share with you. You decide either to strike some from that list and or add somebody else on that list. We'll establish the timelines, how we advertise. Early on, we need to talk about the salary range you're comfortable with. It's a question that we get from the applicants a lot, and we don't commit you at all. But what I typically say is the current superintendent is making, and that gives them kind of oh, okay, I get it. And then we craft the job posting. Is there a question? Okay, then we meet with your stakeholders. At the same time, we're getting materials together to promote. We distributed just this last weekend. It was just the other day. We were at CSBA, and we had a couple of flyers of a couple of other searches that my colleagues are doing right now. But we're trying to get out there, and we go to these conferences, and we put out information about, Newark Unified is looking for a superintendent with these criteria, hopefully. And then we're recruiting applicants. We don't have what we call a stable that we just, okay, here folks, apply to this. Yes, we have candidates that we have interviewed elsewhere, some who didn't make it for whatever reasons, but some who, you might be interested in Newark, and we do that. But we also have our own candidate. Typically, and I know this is true of Adam, we will make some phone calls. Newark's opening up. This is what they have to offer. Take a look, sort of thing. And then, of course, people will give us names as well. And then you and we will evaluate all the files. We will do the reference checks, as I've already said. We go beyond the application. We've also developed a protocol through artificial intelligence to even get us to go deeper. Now, we recognize we can't just accept everything on what AI says. So I did it on myself one time. How did you know that? So there is a level of accuracy to it. And then we have those that are on a top list. Excuse me again. On the top of list, the ones we would say, these are folks you probably want to interview, we have them do a video responding to 3 questions. You will get to see that video. And again, when we get time to identify who you want to interview, it'll be at that time, you'll look at their interview, the way they talked, answered that one, or I really like the way they answered this. So you get to see them before you see them, so to speak. And then we'll meet with you, we'll review in depth the shortlist, what we call the shortlist. But we will show you every application, everybody who's applied. This is another special meeting. It's typically entirely in closed session because we're talking about personnel in there. And we'll work with you and identify who you want to interview. We'll prepare you for that process, which includes what sort of things do you want to ask them. And then we'll schedule the interviews. And all the while we're keeping the candidates, well informed of what's going on in this particular process. Now, when it says schedule and coordinate interviews, we will give you a couple of options on how you might want to interview. Different boards have done it differently. Some boards, only the board does the interview. Some boards, it's the board and the a stakeholder committee. And with that, some boards want to do the interview and have what we call a social aspect to it. So it's a more informal basis to get to know the individual. Again, we will work with you on what you want to decide. I will tell you, if you choose to do a stakeholder panel, they do not make a recommendation to you. What we have them do is go through, and they will have done some interviewing, and what do you see the strengths in this candidate? What are the questions this candidate raises for you? That's all they will give us on each person that they interview. And then we bring all of that to you. I'm sorry, thank you. And then, yes, we bring that information back to you as you are starting to decide who do we want to interview and who are we going to pass on. And then, hopefully, if all goes well, you've selected your candidate and you're feeling very good about that. And as I said a few moments ago, we don't go away. Particularly that first year to 2 years, we will meet with you and your new superintendent to establish the goals your short-term goals you want that superintendent to go for. And we can help you identify or develop your evaluation tool that you want to use. We have a 2-year guarantee that if in fact the candidate leaves for almost any reason, we will come back not with any additional charges except for the cost of travel and if we need lodging. And for Adam and I, that would not be, you wouldn't need that. But that would be the only cost, is expenses for travel, mostly for us. But we will come back and work with you and reopen the position. I've had that happen before, and interestingly enough, the candidate, the board selected, within the first month, I think it was after payday, because she said, I can't live on this salary. Well, you knew what the salary is going to be, so you run into things like that. Okay, so your investment, as you see, and you've got a packet that lists this as well, $20,800. We go through the steps that I just outlined. We will advertise where you want, and you see in the proposal the ones we will typically advertise for. Now, some boards want it to go broader. Now, first off, just because we're a national firm, you're going to get national exposure because it'll go on our website. But you may want other places to advertise beyond what we have there in the proposal. And oftentimes there's an additional cost for that. It says 2 days of in-person stakeholder. Don't think of those as day 1, day 2, because typically in trying to set up that schedule, it doesn't work that easily. So while we may give you 48 hours of service, it may not be day 1, day 2. It may be 3 hours here, 7 hours here, etc. So we break that up. And we do online responses to the same questions we do face-to-face. And we have a great software program we use, K-12 Insight, that really helps synthesize all of that information. Also helps us with interpretations where needed. Then we present to you a report. We give you everything people have said. We go through it ourselves and try to identify certain themes. We share those themes with you, but you get everything that we heard except if, in fact, somebody has attacked an individual within the district. We redact those sort of things because this is a public document and that we need to respect folks for that part. And then, of course, you get the interviews. We do a criminal and financial background as well. It's not just calling people up and, is this a good lady or a good guy? No, we need more than that. Do they have a criminal background? And then part of that cost is our expenses for travel. So you got us, Mac and Jake, K-12 Insights, which I've already shared with you a little bit. They help us with the stakeholder report. And we also have this Innovate K-12. And they will often help us with you in developing your plan for this new superintendent, but also it has the feature to do a survey of the individual. Who are they and how do they really interact here? So, the question already. So, what questions may you have?
Member Hill?
Thank you, and you pronounce your name Dr. Mariah?
Moreo, yes. Mow
Moreo.
like you mow the lawn, Ray-O.
Okay, Maria, thank you. Just one question. So are you and Dr. Clark part owners of McPherson Jacobson, the LLC organization?
No, we are not part owners. It
Okay.
is owned by another individual.
Great, thank you.
Member Block?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I had a quick question about that potential for a stakeholder panel that you talked about. So does that mean that like the finalists, once selected, they're coming to Newark and then they're participating like in an interview with the board and then a separate panel with the stakeholders, and then we just get like your summary of what the stakeholders have said? Is that
You'll get more than, we
Okay.
coordinate those on the same day.
Okay.
So when you're interviewing, the stakeholders are also interviewing. And then when we process with them as to what did you like, what questions you have, we're charting that. And we bring the charts into the room where you are as you start to deliberate, and we share all of that with you.
I see.
And you select who will be on that stakeholder panel. Once again, if that's the way you choose to go, we will give you a suggested list, but you may have other folks that you think. And of course, we'll work with you, and let's not make this a community forum type interview because we've got to make it manageable. And so 10 to 15 folks on the panel.
Got it. And then in addition to that, there's also like connected to that is like conversations with students and conversations with parent groups and things like that that are also built into that 2-day engagement period.
We don't compensate them for their input. The only compensation is what you're paying us already as your consultant.
Oh, no, I meant just like with engaging with them. Like, so that 2-day period that you had mentioned that are not necessarily 2 consecutive days, that would include like you or somebody within your organization meeting with students, meeting with parent groups, things like that.
Yes,
Awesome.
exactly. And in all likelihood, it would be me.
Member Thomas?
Well, thank you again for being here, Dr. Murillo. My question is also about the stakeholder panel, because I've experienced both. Could you tell us the pros and cons of each in your experience, and what percentage of your districts that you've worked with use a stakeholder panel versus not?
I would almost say it's a 40-60%, 60% going with the stakeholder group, and then 40% boards choosing not to. First part of your question again, Nancy, I'm sorry.
Well, what are the pros and cons?
Oh, pros and cons. Pros and cons. Well, the pros is you're involving your community at a different level. And then there's the opportunity for more buy-in from the community as to your selected superintendent. And now they've got a kindred spirit. Oh, I knew who you are, da-da-da-da-da. The con to that is, number one, getting people to commit because typically interviews go 2 days. May go more, depending on how many you choose to interview. And getting people to commit. And one of the things we'll say to you, and we will say to anybody who wants to be on that stakeholder who you identify, we will say, you must commit to those days that are scheduled. Do not plan, if you've got a wedding coming up, a baptism coming up, this and that, let us know now, because we have to hold on to those dates. And we say that to you, and we'll say that to the stakeholders group. We have had an occasion where a stakeholder member actually during the interview was texting and this happened to be a principal in the district, texting some of his colleagues about what he was hearing. We learned about that, removed him from the panel, and the superintendent board ultimately released him because it was so unethical of what he was doing. We try to watch that very closely. We have them sign a confidentiality agreement. We do everything we can for you as well as for the candidate because sometimes their board doesn't want to hear about that just yet. So that's the con. And that's only happened in my experience one time.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the reason I brought it up is because when we used that panel, there were certainly, they're supposed to give whether they should move forward or not, but some of the panelists said, no, you've got to hire this person.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
you
no,
know,
we
they
don't
just-
allow
they
that.
just-
That's why we say
Yeah.
what's good and what are the questions. And we tell them right up front before we even start, you are not making a recommendation to the board. And you will not be prioritizing these folks. That's up to you.
Okay. I noticed, I believe in your proposal, you had a timeline.
Yes.
And that was something that we had sent out as part of our RFQ. Can you meet this timeline? Is that an issue for your company or for you?
That last part, is that a did?
Is it an issue or a problem? Like, is that going to be, that's going to work, the schedule will work for you?
It will work for us. And again, the very first time we meet with you, we'll finalize that because some of those dates may not work for you.
Right.
And work through that.
Okay. Any other questions? Member Aguiano.
Dr. Morel, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate that. Just a quick question. You elaborated and spoke a bit about a 2-year guarantee. Could you talk a little bit more about that guarantee? And how does that apply to when you're doing the search firms? How does that, or what numbers have you had in the sample that you gave of the individual? But just curious to know that you have ties here in the East Bay. How long have you been there and how many times has this occurred?
Well, as I said, this is the even dozen for me if in fact you select us. And I've been with the firm for about 4 years. So I've been around. In those 4 years, we've only had 2 times where we had to put the guarantee in place. The board wanted to put it in place. There was one time, and again, this was during the pandemic, we had finished the process, yada, yada, yada. The superintendent was from Southern California. And because of the, being confined and et cetera, she decided she needed to go back to Southern California and be with her family directly. So she left, and we came back in to help the board do that. There was another time, again, unfortunately, things happen, and one superintendent wasn't working. It wasn't the right mix, and the board released that person. And again, we came in to assist you finding the next person.
And Dr. Morel, do you reset the whole process again, or do you continue from where you left off?
We kind of continue where we left off. We reopen the applications because in all likelihood, those who we've said, sorry, this isn't the right match, we've already contacted and said, sorry, it's not the right match. And so we reopen that. Typically, unless you as a board want us to do that, the stakeholder report won't change much from when we did it to then. It's really the applications, looking at those applications, looking at the interviews, the recorded interviews that they do. And again, another decision point for you, do you want to have another stakeholder panel? Or do you, at this point, just you as a board want to make that decision?
Okay, thank you.
Member Thomas?
Yes, Dr. Moreno. I have a question. If you been watching the news, San Francisco appointed a superintendent that they had been working with, I believe, that did not have an educational background. Would you ever be recommending to us, like, say, we give our criteria, we want someone that has experience in whatever part of education. If you see a non-traditional candidate that you feel works out, will you push back at us and ask us to consider that person?
Yes, we would bring that back, and we'll have a recommendation, based on this person's experience. This is why we're saying they would be a fit, even though they're not currently a superintendent and they're coming from someplace else. We get a lot of applicants from other states, and it's very few that we end up bringing here because California is so different. And when we start talking to them, particularly about finances, it's clear that they're going to have to come up to speed so much that, you know, they got to come in running, not learning on that alone. So that would be some of our criteria there. And we've also had substitute teachers who have applied, and that's been the extent of their experience. And we just don't, not to belittle substitutes, we need them dearly, but I don't think they're quite ready for a superintendency.
I'm looking at the, I'm thinking about, you're doing the search, but your company is doing multiple searches, I would assume, at the same time. Do you recommend the same candidates for different districts, or do you try to have the candidate, I mean, how do you deal with that issue? You know
Well,
what
that's an it depends sort of answer, because yes, and we could be in the middle of a search and they could be in the applicant pool. Matter of fact, when I just finished, before the board got to interview this individual, he got another job. So yes, it's not always, okay, this whole cadre, we're moving over here now. It's those that best align with the criteria that you set. So we may invite some other applicants to apply here, but it's not an automatic sweep. Okay, this group didn't make it there, so let's come over here. No, we don't do that.
Okay. That to me is important. In our last search, we had someone who, like, we were calling to offer them the job, and they called us 2 minutes before and said, I just accepted a job someplace else. So, you know, and we went through the whole process and all of that, and then, you know, needing to kind of shift gears, you know.
And that's part of the reason we stay in contact with the applicants, particularly the shortlist folks, because that happens. If they're a strong candidate and they're applying to more than one job, there's a good chance somebody else is going to pick them up. And matter of fact, again, a search I just finished had that happen, and the applicant let us know before we set up interviews and everything, I took this job. As a matter of fact, I was just at CSBA the last couple of days, and I ran into him. He's doing wonderfully. Would have been a great candidate, but another district got him.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wait on that question. That's okay. Any other questions? All right. I want to thank you so much for coming this morning on a Saturday morning. We really do appreciate your time and effort to be here, and we will let you know in the next day or so.
Sure. Thank you, and I wish you all the luck. As I said at the start, this is the most important decision a board has to make. And so I understand what you go through, whether you select us or another firm. I just wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. So I believe the next step for us is for people to kind of take a chance, go through and look at questions, write down any thoughts that you have. And the plan at this point is to kind of talk about people's perspectives and ideas, and then we will take a break after that before we move into the second part of today.
So are we gonna select them today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so take a few minutes to, you know, look at your notes and or their proposal if you didn't get something answered, a question answered that you want.
And are we going to talk about this as a board?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, there's no like now going to a vote kind of thing. No, we will have a discussion. Just trying to give people some time to pull their thoughts together.
President Jones, I do believe we do have a person who wants to be able to speak on the item.
On this item?
Yes,
Oh, okay, I didn't get a comment card, so,
she's filling it out right now. She wasn't sure that that was appropriate.
got it.
It's kind of awkward. I was on the interview panel under McPherson and Jacobson, so just listening, I just kind of wanted to.
Mrs. Parks, if you could bring that microphone just a little bit closer, thank you.
I'll turn it on.
Sorry, I just wanted to speak as being someone who was on the interview panel under McPherson and Jacobson, and I did work with Daniel and his or his partner at the time, which was Bill, and we were a group of probably about a dozen, and we had 4 interviewees, and we got the applications just prior to sitting down for the with the interviewees. They went through a list of questions, and we were to rank them as far as whether we felt that they met the criteria or didn't meet the criteria. And so he's been with, he had said 4 years, and he's been, so it's been at least 5.5, because it would have been when Dr. Triplett was hired. Just giving my perspective, not being able to look at the applications, from the stakeholder perspective, just for you also, is that to be able to look at those applications for more than 5 minutes before you start asking questions and things. The way it was handled with us, we were, like I said, given the applications, didn't have time to absorb it all. With Dr. Triplett, they didn't explain that he was just a dean, or he was in essence, he would have been like what would have been a vice principal, or I'm sorry, a principal for the middle school. What his application said was that he was the superintendent of the middle school in Oakland. Well, if you don't know the structure of Oakland Unified, one of the things that came out later on was just, in essence, he was a glorified, maybe upper principal in that level. So, and Oakland Unified was pushed heavily by them. So it just kind of left, it was kind of awkward, I think, with how that practice happened. And maybe COVID was to blame, but sitting back there listening, I just felt like I needed to explain what I experienced being on the interview panel. I do feel that it is good to have all of everybody's perspective, because of course everybody comes with experience, or what they've just lived in their life and things. So I just wanted to share with you that making sure that you do get those applications to where you can have time to go through them and such. And that was my experience with McPherson and Jacobson. I almost kind of felt like we were funneled in a certain way, just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabe, are you ready to talk? I'm asking.
Oh, yeah.
As people gather their last few thoughts, I thought we should start. How do we want to do this? Do we want to look at one firm and kind of talk about the pros and cons and then the other? Do we want to kind of talk back and forth about them? How would you like to approach?
I think it probably is easiest to jump straight to comparison. I think, like when we're speaking about one, I think inherently in the back of my mind is what I saw from the other. So I think
Sounds
we
good.
probably just got to jump right in and start comparing the two to one another. And I think the pros and cons of each will emerge in that analysis.
Okay, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to. So I made myself a little pros and cons little chart in the sticky note here. I feel like a little bit torn in that I think that there are certainly certain strengths that each highlights. It seems like Leadership Associates has more California experience. I appreciated that they don't have a limit on their stakeholder engagement. It's not like a 2-day window, but they'll meet with as many people as we ask without any limit. I appreciated that they were all-inclusive cost-wise and that they offered to help with interviews. Those all seemed like really positive things. They mentioned, though, that they do not do a criminal background check, which seemed a little bit concerning. And their reference checks seemed a little less detailed than what we heard from Mac and Jake, where they talked about going through multiple layers. In their documentation, they talked about going through 3 layers of references, of like talking to the reference, and then who else should we talk to? And talking to that person, and who else should we talk to there? They also didn't have the setting up of performance goals and metrics for the superintendent once selected, which isn't necessary, but I think is like a nice feature that Mac and Jake added, the ability to work with the chosen superintendent to set up a clear plan for goals, evaluations, the metrics to be used to ensure a smooth start. And then switching over to Mac and Jake, I've already mentioned some of those things. I think the stakeholder panel is interesting. Whether or not it's good or bad, I mean, I think it depends all on the execution. We heard a public comment that suggested maybe the last time it wasn't super well executed. So that's something that we could either opt into or opt out of, depending on the board's thoughts on that. I appreciated that they were a little bit more open, I think, about mishaps in the process, which, suggests that there were mishaps, but they were open about them. And I thought the video interview thing that they mentioned for finalists was interesting. Some of the cons were their limitation on 2 days of education partner meetings without a further expense. Their retention rate is a little bit lower. They seem to have a little bit less California expertise, and they don't offer support in the interview process, which I'm not sure if that's something that we want or not. And lastly, one of the 2 people that we'd potentially be working with is a full-time superintendent, so maybe they're just super busy, and I don't know if that's a factor that we ought to consider as well. But that's like my overview.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to present their thoughts? You ready, Member Hill?
I'd like to wait for other people to go.
Okay. You ready or not, Member Thomas?
Well, I'm not sure I'm ready because I think Member Block really covered very well and noticed things that between the two that sound right to me. I feel concerned about having the community panel because of my experience before and what the speaker mentioned. So from that standpoint, I would hope that the board would perhaps consider not using a community panel because of the situations I've seen arise in that situation. I think we can get at the same information and making sure that the community has an input versus with the process that's already in place for engaging the community and stakeholder groups. Having said that, I think they both have excellent structures and processes that, and they both seem to have outreach to key groups that they can recruit from. I think it's really important that we try to go beyond just the putting the word out and really try to engage and find people that can give us personal recommendations. we may have a shining star, or there may be a shining star candidate out there that is ready to be a superintendent, but if we say we'll only consider a superintendent, we may be cutting off our nose to spite our face, that sort of thing.
Okay. Member Anguiano?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I do concur with Member Block and also Member Thomas went ahead and mentioned. It's really important that we do take a step back and really just analyze, review our notes and our information. But the pros and cons, Member Black went ahead and mentioned that it is really important for us to have that transparency, that information up front. And when you're saying that these are the mistakes that we made or we ran into these errors, they're talking about them, which I appreciate up front. But both of the proposals are great. Leadership and Associates, we've had communication in the past. We've had them be a part of this process before. So this is something that they know their community, and they also know how diverse, how our community is really something that we need to, the community partners is a really big piece, and the advertising, the reaching out, the communication, and also just the surveying of our students is really, really important. So I really appreciated that piece because you're separating the student voice and also the rest of the community to see what we're looking for in the new superintendent.
Okay. You ready yet? All right.
So I agree with many of the comments that my fellow board members have made. I think one important distinction that we should consider is owners versus consultants. And so when you own something, right, you're going to be more vested than if you're a consultant. And so in the case of Leadership Associates, both Dr. Horridge and Dr. Is it Adam? Andrew, are partners within that. In the McPherson-Jacobson situation, both Dr. Moreo and Dr. Clark are consultants. So that's one comment. Another comment is you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so this is a sales presentation. And so when you're and we specifically asked to identify who would be the consultants that would be working with us and to actually have them come in and speak with us and for us to get a chance to ask them questions. In the case of Leadership Associates, we had both of the identified principals here. Well, one was remote, but we had a chance to actually interact with them. In the McPherson-Jacobson situation, one of them wasn't here, so Dr. Clark, and there's an additional challenge in that he's a sitting superintendent. And so if he can't make a sales presentation, what are our thoughts around his ability to actually be involved in the search when he's got a full-time job? So I think that that's going to be problematic. And then I would just say the last point is I was not here for the search that McPherson-Jacobson did, but I was certainly here in the aftermath. And so, and although McPherson-Jacobson in their presentation had talked about how their track record is in being able to place superintendents that sit here, that are able to actually sit in place for a long period of time, that wasn't the case in the search that they did for us. So, and we certainly had that situation also with Leadership Associates, but I think that the distinction was that the board, and actually three of us here, removed the superintendent that McPherson-Jacobson had brought to us. And whereas in Leadership Associates, we lost Dr. DeLeon, but we weren't actually replacing her. She had some personal life challenges, particularly in the health arena, that caused her to leave. And so, and I did, and I think that three of us here participated in the search that was done by Leadership Associates before, and I actually thought that it was a very robust search and a very robust process. Very organized, very inclusive. Again, I can't speak to the McPherson-Jacobson search because I wasn't involved in that, but and one of the reasons why I was asking Dr. Horridge about the team that they identified from a support perspective, I just know, having been a former consultant myself, that it's all about boots on the ground. It's all about who you have involved. And so the fact that actually that we've worked with both Dr. Horridge and Dr. Adam before, and that they're bringing the same support team in, and I felt that things ran very smoothly. I think that there is a I think I see the scales tipping more clearly in one direction versus another. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say in my, in listening to both of them and kind of looking at the questions that Member Thomas and I kind of came up with regarding the two different firms, they both more or less answered, all the questions. I was able to kind of write some things down on each one. I liked that, as Member Block said, that McPherson, Jacobson do what seems like a much deeper dive into the background with the criminal and financial verifications. That is that's something that I think is an important factor, that if we went with leadership, that we might consider doing that, in which case that would be an add-on cost for us. I, too, did really like the process that we went through with Leadership Associates last time. We know the two reps that would be working with us. I like the ownership aspect in the company. I think in terms of the two companies with Mr. Moreo, knowing us has a past history with the district. That's a little bit of a plus because he understands the community that he would be helping to search for. But I also feel that Ms. Horsch and Mr. Andrew also, with their experience, have that. So that's kind of a wash for me. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I'm definitely leaning one way. So how do people feel about, do we want to take a straw poll? Do we want to do an actual vote? Are we at that point? Are there any other comments that people would like to make as we drive through this process? Superintendent.
I was not planning on making any comments, but I did want to just kind of weigh in on the background check. One of the things that we did with the CBO is that we did work with a company who is now we have access to that company, that we could actually help with that background check. And if that's something that the board would want to entertain, I'm willing to do that. Is available to you. And we've been vetted with them to be able to do that for future candidates that we may want to bring forward. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. That was actually what I was just about to ask, because, in my opinion, that was the biggest concern about moving forward with Leadership Associates was, they straight up said, we don't do a criminal background check. We trust what they tell us. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But if we can supplement with our own.
And I think we just need to make that very clear in the process, that when you are doing your application, that we say that there will be a background check by a third-party vendor, that we just make that very, very clear. And that it may also include a scrub, perhaps, of social media.
Cost-wise, how much would that add to the search, would you say?
It was minimal. I think to me, it's not consequent. I can't remember what the amount was, but it was a couple $1,000s.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I wouldn't want you to make that your barrier.
Member Thomas?
I just wanted to say there was one statistic that I feel good about, but then I have questions about, and that is the five-year retention rate at 85%. Because, you know, we certainly haven't experienced that in our recent searches and hiring. So I just hope that we can find a candidate that is wanting to stay and that the board is supportive enough to cause them to stay. So I think we need stability, and that means we need more than 1 or 2 or 3 years of having a superintendent in the district.
I think also one of the other things to think about as we move forward is I liked the when we do offer a candidate the position that MACTIC did talk about support afterwards. And I do feel like that's something that we really do need to think about and to look at, no matter if they have experience or not. I think the transition time is really critical to have a new superintendent have that support. And so that's something else that I would like us to, you know, in the long run, think about how we're going to support them. Because that's a critical piece to anyone's support, whatever position you're, you know, taking on, whether it's a new teacher or a teacher that's been teaching for a couple of years. There's still support that is needed, and we do need to really look at that as we move forward. Any other comments other than Member Hills in just a second, and then we can look at potentially taking a vote. Member Hill.
I think that one thing that's important to understand, and none of the firms are going to tell you this, right? But as a former consultant, I'll just tell you that. So people offer a warranty, but at the end of the day, right, they don't want to honor the warranty. And the reason is because it's money out of their pocket. And so they're going to have to pay an hourly rate. And so they'll promise you that up front, but when it comes time to invoking it, they're going to drag their feet, and they'll maybe do a couple of efforts to sort of appease you or whatever, but they're not going to dedicate significant hours. And I do, although I wasn't here as a part of the McPherson-Jacobson search, I was here when Dr. Triplett was here, and they actually did bring back one of the partners who was involved in that search in kind of a support capacity. But again, I'm just sorry to say I was not very impressed. And we were having issues around goal setting, and it really wasn't bringing a lot of value added, quite frankly. And so I think that again, it's all about who gets dedicated to the team. And so we used to have a saying when I was working for the big consulting companies where the partners come in and pitch, but then you drive up the school bus, right? Meaning that you bring in the junior consultants, you bring in the people who are not always the qualified ones to actually do the work. And so I just think that we need to be cognizant that the team that we're really hiring is the team for the search. Who knows what's going to happen after the search? Thanks.
Member Thomas?
Yeah, I just would like to echo what Member Hill said. These firms are not about, they're about helping us choose a superintendent, and I don't think they're about mentoring the superintendent we get. I think we'd be better off helping find a mentor that we know and pay that person as a consultant to work with whoever we hire.
I will make one more additional comment about this because I had a lot of very frank, honest conversations with Ms. Horish about this exact issue of, you know, if the person doesn't go through the 2 years, at that point, Leadership Associates, in theirs, it said if they don't last for a year. I know I read someplace in their stuff this time, and I can't find it right off the bat, but that this time they were basically giving us a 2-year they would work with us 2 years past our hire if they did not work out, again, for expenses. And when we talked about that last year, she reiterated multiple times and even went to someone higher than, you know, her position to say, yes, they would support us with just expenses. So I feel pretty confident that if we, for some reason, got into that situation, that leadership would support us and back up what they're saying.
In other words, they would do a repeat search.
In other words, they would do a repeat search. It starts at step 3, which would be, we would not be doing all there would not be the community partner input part. We would go with the previous list, but it would be the advertising and the whole,
Yeah, and I was just differentiating
That whole
the
process.
mentorship part
Yes,
versus
yes.
the redoing the search part.
Yeah, I agree. We can, you know, we can always follow up with a mentor of our choosing if to do that. All right, how are people feeling? Member Hill?
I would just like to suggest that we just do a vote.
I was just going to go for that. I think it probably needs to be 2 votes, one for leadership, one for McPherson, just so that no? Okay, never mind. Just a motion. All right, we'll go with that. Not sure, you know, I wasn't sure what the process was, so I'll listen to those that be. Can I have a motion, please, then?
So I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Leadership Associates as our search firm.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Let me write that down. And I will call for a vote. Thank you. Well, all right. I think we have a firm. Great. Thank you all for your comments, your deliberation, and thoughtful listening today. I'm excited to be able to let them know. Not that it's necessarily my position. It won't be, but.
Oh, it is? Up to you to let
Do
them
I get to call?
You're
Oh, yay.
supposed to, yeah.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure what that process was, but I'm
Actually,
excited.
If I may interrupt, I think we're going to need to pull together a contract, and so I'm looking at the amounts. It would be within my purview to be able to go off and sign off for that, but I just want to make sure that staff is able to help work with you to be able
Yes.
to bring that forward.
All right, great. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you again, everyone. Let's take do we want to go for a 25-minute break? 20-minute break? Okay, 20-minute break, is that all right?
We don't need much of a break, do we?
I don't know, I'm just trying to be conscientious of
You're okay?
bio break for sure, or,
Yeah, and there's some snacks in the other room over there.
okay.
So if you'd like a
so
little
let's-
snack.
were people eyeing your snack.
Oh, I think.
There were,
I could go
Yeah,
for a
I don't
snack.
know who they were, but they were like peeking in.
All right, let's take 20 minutes and try to shoot for coming back at 11:10. Thank you. No. But until one of your little hands clicks it into the other.
Oh, I have to click.
If I do this on hers, then it clicks me into speaking mode. Okay. All right, we are returning from our break at 11:25, and we are moving on to the next section of our day today, which is District Assessment Management Advisory Committee. And so I'm going to turn that over to Superintendent at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, this is kind of an exciting topic, one that we've been having some conversations about. We've had a study session. With us this morning is Ms. Serene Abrams, who's our legal team that's helping us as we move forward with looking at what we can do with our assets here in the district. But before we get there, one of the things that came out of our last conversation was that we need time together as a group to talk about what kinds of things in education do we want to be able to do tied to our goals, right, to be able to improve some of the conditions in our school district that would really help us. So, it's great that we've got property as being an asset that can maybe help us in that delivery. But more importantly, what is it that really drives within our goals and framework that we can't do now, either because we don't have the means, or because we haven't set the right direction to be able to move it that way. And I'll give you an example. I had a wonderful conversation recently with Member Thomas, and she said to me, "Oh, we took a resolution a few years back about being a STEM district." I gotta tell you, I've been here for 2 years. I didn't know about the resolution, but it was really important to me. And as I really started thinking about our facilities and doing my walkarounds, we aren't enough of a STEM facility. And we need to make sure if that's something that we are going to go out there and go do, if that's what we all agree is a priority in our educational delivery, then that's something that we should be having a discussion here, because that could be one of the outcomes that changes who we are as a district, right? There's been other things that have come up with regards to how do we continue to attract and retain the talent to be here. We've had lots of conversation about that, and each year in June we watch a mass exiting of people, and we want to stop that. And so we've had some conversations around it, but what can we do to be able to do that? So I want to thank our committee members. I've been meeting with members Hill and Thomas. They've been really instrumental in working with Ms. Abrams and myself with regards to how to reset some of the conversations that we need to have around this, and how we engage our community also in the conversation. And that may be surveys, it might be going out and having conversations with them, whatever that might be. But I'm hoping that we can really kind of today talk about some of the great outcomes that we'd really like to be able to have in education here at Newark that we currently don't have today that might help us be more successful. Does that kind of sum that up? Anything else you might like to add, members Hill and Thomas?
I think you captured it. I think it's, how do we recruit and retain our talent, because that fits in with our major objective to increase academic performance. And we can't be having the same turnover we've had recently and meet that objective.
Yeah, for the community who might be listening in on this, I do want to thank many of our members who have been attending a variety of different sessions to be able to learn about what future workforce housing could look like. What are the things that we can do with our properties that we might have? What can we do with our educational system, more importantly? I think those are some of the things that as you've been going out and doing your work out there and looking at the programs that truly attract families into communities, what can we be doing to better enhance our school facilities? We heard some things during the time that we went out for the bond. We heard that people wanted to see more STEM, more engineering. They wanted to have maker spaces. Those are things that we've talked about. We've got money to be able to do that through our Measure O funds that can help us with that, and help champion that with us. But I think those are some of the things that we really need to sit there and talk about. And again, I think about that resolution that you shared with me, and I really want to thank you for bringing that to my attention. Because again, as I reflect upon from the time that you took that resolution, I don't think we had action steps that were planned in there, nor do I think that it even tied to our overall education arching goals that you have set as a board. So again, if that's an important resolution, maybe we need to bring it back and revisit it. But I'd like to be able to open up for a conversation and then maybe just take some notes with Ms. Abrams with regards to some of the outcomes that you might like to see for Newark Unified School District.
Member Thomas?
I just wanted to say that I remember that resolution very well. We had come up with a draft based on things we had seen. Here we are in the middle of Silicon Valley and having a lot of high-tech housing people, high-tech people going into the new housing in town. And the staff grabbed at that. Rachel Bloom, who's our current NTA president, and a group of our science resource teachers took it and they crafted that and made it their own. And a lot has happened since then that is aimed in that direction that we haven't just put the words to. For example, we have maker spaces in all of our elementary schools. We've set aside that, Kennedy, for example, became an arts part of the STEAM. The high school Star Lab, that was several $100,000 that was put into that. So we have space and we have equipment that we have purchased, and we have a desire, I think, among our staff to inflame that interest and really so that we can identify what we're doing and call it by its name, STEM, STEAM, whatever, and use that as leverage to get people and drive what we do with our facilities.
I also want to assure you also have a lot of one-time money coming in that will help champion some of the equipment that you need to be able to get. I'm excited about that, but it's one-time money. It's going to go away. It's not going to be ongoing. And thinking about ongoing expenses, I think we also need to have some conversations around what does that look like to be able to make sure that we attract and retain the talent that you're talking about to be able to help inspire that next generation of thinkers.
And I think to just maybe add a little bit more background. So as you mentioned, Superintendent, so Member Thomas and I have been meeting as a part of the quote-unquote subcommittee related to 7-Eleven. But I think that what we all discuss, and we've been meeting with Ms. Abrahamian, did I say it right?
Oh, man.
Okay. But I think that we had talked about how we need to do some sort of, what's the right term? Some type of portfolio analysis, right? So we've been talking about that in a couple of different meetings. But I think that what we realized is that a 7-Eleven committee, as it's normally structured, is not really geared to do that kind of analysis. And so in some ways, we maybe need to take a step back. And number one, we as a board need to agree to what are the priorities. If we're going to sell property, we're not going to sell property just for the sake of selling property. Are there certain objectives that we want to try to achieve where selling property would be beneficial? And so, and although we've kind of informally talked about it, I think that maybe we need to land a little bit in this meeting, although we can't make a decision in this meeting because it's a study session, but at least establish a consensus to say, here's the top 2 or 3 priorities where we believe that doing some kind of sale of property could support that. But then that maybe the next step would be what's the additional sort of portfolio analysis that needs to happen and additional information that needs to get collected before we can then identify specific properties to potentially surplus and then establish a 7-Eleven committee to then act on. And so am I summarizing this correctly, Superintendent?
Yes, absolutely.
And so where we really need the board's input is to have that discussion about, okay, what are, and as superintendent mentioned, right, we have bond money that's already going to fund some things. So we've already carved out money for STEM specifically at Schilling. It's not a district-wide effort, but we have carved out some money. But as the superintendent's indicating, the bond money is one-time money, and also it's restricted in terms of its uses. And there may be other things that we need to fund that.
I'm going to make some notes here on the board as you're talking.
Okay, sure. And so therefore, we may need to look at selling property as a way to either supplement an ongoing cost, or maybe to fund certain things that bond money can't be used for. And so I think what we're hoping for is that the board can just sort of, we can all spitball and just say, well, what are the things that we believe at this point that our district really needs, big strategic things, and then what that potentially could be funded by property sales, and then that will then give us the direction, the compass to then take the next steps.
Member Block?
Thank you. And just to build on that comment a little bit, I think one of the things that I've thought about and I'd really like to hear the input of our unions on is about like what CSEA and NTA think would improve with retention. So, I mean, I know I've heard people talk about workforce housing as a potential way of improving retention, and having housing for staff potentially on one of our surplus sites that could be constructed over time. But I've also heard people mention the potential for leasing out property in order to generate a revenue stream for healthcare. And I kind of feel like that's not something that we should have an opinion on until we hear from the unions about what they think would be more beneficial to them. I mean, those to me seem like two of the strongest possibilities for improving our staff morale and retention, either being able to bring back healthcare in some way or offer workforce housing. But rather than us deciding without their input, I would really be curious to see like what our teachers and what our staff think on those options. Like if they had to choose between using a lease on a surplus property to fund healthcare or to construct workforce housing, like what would people be more inclined to support? And that could then guide our decision making as well. So we really gather their input because it's meant to benefit them and really encourage people to stay for the long term.
Member Aguiano?
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your ideas. It's really when we're talking about how can we reach out to our community, Newark is growing, but we're declining. And we have to make sure that we're connecting with our families, our community members. We talked about the resolution of the STEM resolution that we had. We could probably revisit, instead of just the STEM, just integrate the arts piece.
Well, it was a STEAM.
Oh, it's the STEAM, okay. So just to revisit and make sure that we're incorporating robotics, virtual reality, things that are really setting our children up to be competitive in our surrounding communities. Silicon Valley is in our backyard, and we really have to make sure that we're exposing our children at an early age, but to have that tied with education and really, yes, they're having fun while they're learning. There could be looking at a curriculum in the classrooms, be an elective, and go into a virtual reality lab, like the STAR Lab, and utilize virtual reality to go and visit Rome, go visit Greece, and be able to see what exactly is it and incorporate that. So speaking of that, just, to really reach out to our communities that are coming in. We have to make sure that the cultures that are here, we have to celebrate our cultures. In order for us to do that, we have to relate. So we have to get our family, our community input in regards to how can we, really revisit what we have in place already, but to make it bigger with the collaboration of our community. So thank you.
So I've heard a couple ideas kind of thrown out there, and I think there's definitely some survey work we could do with our teams, and definitely meeting with CSEA and CTA internally to find out what would help to be able to attract and retain people. I think I already know the answers. We've had plenty of conversations. It really is around being able to bring our pay up to a more competitive level. We are the lowest within Alameda County. I will tell you that right now. We are still the lowest. That does make me feel good. I know we've got work to do there, and I know it's been difficult with declining enrollment and then trying to keep as many schools operational that we have. Like we're using some additional precious resources there. So that's concerning, right? But I think to be able to get some more information from the membership in general would be good. And so I'd like to be able to go back and work with their leadership groups and see if we can't come up with some questions to be able to put out. That would be great. Member Anguiano, I really like your idea about being able to go out to the community. We heard a lot about this during the bond around AI and virtual reality and coding and starting from a TK and actually building a continuous set of skills that kids can grow with, right? For like what they're gonna need for the future. It's not just doing just the basic academics anymore. You're gonna have to integrate those various kinds of technology to be able to prepare students. We've already heard about how workforce is changing just in general, just because of all the AI stuff that's coming in. And what jobs will be out there in the future? How will that look? And what does that look like? There's still gonna be a need. We heard a really great speaker yesterday that was research-based, in particular talking about jobs that are gonna go away, but more importantly, the jobs that are gonna come in. And are we really preparing our kids for those skill sets? And it was kind of exciting to hear what she was talking about, but also kind of scary because most of our schools aren't thinking like that. Yeah. Even the schools that have some STEM and STEAM aren't thinking in those kinds of models. But that's the kind of models that we should be thinking in, and we should be inviting other kinds of groups to help us navigate that as being experts, almost like a lecturer that comes in, I think, at the college level, right? And shares their expertise or their research, or whatever it might be. But more importantly, to give the kids the hands-on tools to be able to try it, learn from it, discover it, and and hear from it from whether it's experts that are out there or even interns that are maybe they could come into our classrooms and work with our teachers from the various colleges that are out there that are already exploring those kinds of things. Surgery is changing, every single day by adding AI elements, robotics that are helping to make it more precise. Healthcare in general is changing, right? No pun intended, but they talked a lot about attorneys and the fact that attorneys, and the fact that some things will be taken over because you'll be able to get legal advice very quickly online. But then you had to make sure that it's the right legal advice has been vetted, that you really know what you're looking at, right? So there's still more that has to be done with human that needs to happen with it.
And what I'm wondering, Superintendent, is that there may be a connection between what we just did in terms of hiring an executive search firm and maybe some next steps around this. So we're in the holiday season, and we've just hired a shepherd to help us with their superintendent search, but maybe we need a shepherd for this. And so as you're indicating, Member Block, that maybe we throw out just so it's not completely open-ended, but to throw out some strategic areas that we, the board, think are important, but that we hire a consulting firm to come in and help us actually, use that as a starting point, but then also collect community input, just the way that the executive search team is doing, and so that they can kind of temper it. Because I think one thing that is hard always is until you actually know what a cost is for something, or what you're going to have to trade off, it gets hard to make decisions. But if we have some ideas that we have a consultant come in and help us look at, but also temper that and refine that with community input. And who knows, maybe there's something new that comes up, that there's an additional initiative that maybe we now need to explore and cost out, and that they could then come back and report to the board and say, okay, here's kind of what we found out, here's what potentially the scope, or here's the trade-offs, and maybe we decide, depending on the cost, maybe we do a few of them, right? I mean, we don't, or maybe because of, one cost is so big and so important that maybe that's really where we place our bets, but we're not gonna know until we do a little bit more analysis. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I would like to echo that. I think the sooner the better. If we today can map out what questions we need answered, what potential there is, have that consulting firm look over all the other documents that have been prepared in the last few years about potential uses for our facilities. If we can get a really reputable, knowledgeable, competent, good firm to take us the next step to where we can say to our 7-Eleven committee, okay, these are what we're thinking about. These are the properties we'd like you to look at and determine their best use and whether or not they can be surplused.
I love that idea. I think we could do the same thing that we've kind of done with both the CBO and currently our superintendent search. We can easily put out an RFP. We could ask some people to come in, provide us with, what would that look like? How could they help us navigate that? I think we could do that very quickly, quite frankly, and be able to have, information that comes back to you before the end of January, quite frankly, that maybe we could bring that together. So I could work with the team to be able to put out something that frames that out. That would help us in that journey to be able to get more community input out there here early spring, or actually really this winter, quite frankly. I mean, I'd want to get started on like immediately, develop a timeline. I can work with a subcommittee on the timeline, much like I did with the subcommittee for the superintendent search.
But I think the key thing, Superintendent and Member Block hit on this, is that it's always nice to be asked, right? And so we have maybe some feelings and presumptions about what the priorities are. And of course, we, the board, we've been elected to make those decisions. But at the same time, it would be really good to consult our labor partners, et cetera, because, I mean, I give the example in my business class around where ultimately, like, the customer is the one that defines what's important to them, right? And I give the example of shopping for a car, and where if you have your spouse all of a sudden go out and buy a car for you and they've never talked to you about it, well, the outcome is often not very good. So we should make sure that we consult with the right partners so that we get good input, so that we're all rowing in the same direction.
Member Block?
I think I agree with this idea in theory. I am a little hesitant to support the idea of bringing on another consultant at a time when we're looking at a big budget deficit and may have to make, difficult decisions as a result. Like, I do think that's something that we need to, keep in mind here and really try to make sure we're not, bringing in additional costs and bringing in, a lot of outside people. Like, the budget's not in great shape as is, and I think this is something that we've heard from a lot of people in the community, in that there's a frustration about bringing in consultants when it feels like financially we're not in the most solid place yet. So, I mean, I understand the idea of wanting to bring in outside expertise in order to make sure we're, calculating things properly and like thinking through the details and being analytical. But I do think we need to just like be careful before just like running ahead through that situation and really think through how can this be done strategically in a way that minimizes any additional costs, and that really emphasizes that any short-term costs are being incurred in order to make sure that in the long run we are providing more resources and supports for our staff and our students, so that we have a more sustainable environment for everybody in USD.
Member Block, I appreciate that comment with regards to your concerns with our budget. You're right, we are still deficit spending. We know that our 3-year outlook, we still have lots of work that we need to do. We have to look at staffing and other kinds of things that go along with it. But most importantly, I think, though, even as we continue to look at those challenges, we also have to think about what does the future look like, right? And so sometimes spending a little bit of money and making that investment is important. I don't think we have to use general funds for this. I think there are other funds that are set aside that we could be looking at to be able to use. There's still funds left from the sale of Russian that could be used to be able to help us, navigate this. Some of the stuff may intersect with what's part of Measure O, especially as you look like at a percentage that might, be around some of the STEM ideas that are out there. I mean, I think you can tie some things together so that you're not actually using your general fund and draining that, but instead using some funds that have been kind of sitting dormant for a little while that would help us be able to lift that. And I don't think the cost is going to be that expensive for us to go out there and spend it. And I think it's going to be a good investment for you to be able to have something that will really help you for documentation purposes, almost as a primer, so to speak, as you move forward, and especially as you bring on a new superintendent, and you're doing this work a little bit early, you know, without that superintendent being here. But the reason for doing it is because you're trying to make sure that you're able to keep your workforce. We know that's just really important. We all hated what happened over the last 2 years in July when we were out there looking for so many teachers and so many administrators. It was awful. Almost a third of our teaching staff left. And so you've got to think about that. Like, what do we do to stop that? Because we do want to make the investments. We do want the commitments. We do want to make sure that we're able to attract and retain that talent to really help us navigate what's good for kids. So yeah, you might have to spend a little bit of money, but I think we need to find the right resources to be able to do that with. And I think I can help you with that.
Okay.
And one just frame of reference kind of related to this, and this study was done prior to my time, and Member Thomas is maybe a little bit more familiar with this than I am. And granted, our scope might be a little bit different, but back in, it was, I think, 2016, so we hired Dutra to come in, and the title of their effort was 2030 Facility Strategic Planning. And so they did this whole analysis. Now, granted, this is before COVID and before inflation, but the cost of the contract was, the target was $10,000 going in and not to exceed $40,000. Now, granted, it's going to be more, if we were to
Like
do
4
something
times
like
that?
this, you know, it could very well be double. So I think the question is whether, as superintendent saying, we have the funds in some.
We have the funds.
You know, but it may be, again, you know, money well spent.
Yeah, those funds could be, I mean, we've got funds that we can't spend necessarily on teacher salary. So like, it's a matter of making sure that we leverage the funds that we can use to be able to spend on this initiative, right? To be able to help us and not take away from what we need for our teachers. So, and for the rest of our staff.
Member Block?
Sorry, having trouble getting the mic on. So just to clarify then, so like how would we have to restrict the parameters of like what we're seeking in terms of some sort of external input in order to ensure that we could use like a funding source like the one that you're referencing? Like how would we frame that in order to be able to use a non-general fund kind of pool of money in order to fund that kind of
Yeah, like I said, I know that you've got funds sitting from the Russian sale that could be allocated towards this, that a lot of times you've already earmarked that you didn't want that going towards salary. So that those funds could be used for this particular purposes. I'd have to check to see whether or not any of our developer fees could be used. I don't think they can for this purpose. Definitely the Measure O funds could help inspire this particular piece. I think that could be tied, and I can come back, and I'm planning on coming back in January to kind of review the budget that you gave to us with the priorities and talk to you about some other priorities. There's some funds that we won't spend that we thought we were going to spend because we were able to use the grant from CalShape. So there's some money that we're bringing back. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit and some other initiatives that are really needed here in our community to be able to help support with those funds. So I'll be bringing that document back to you in January just to come back and revisit it with some additional recommendations from the team as to where we think those funds should be next spent for allocation. You also at any time can do a second round, do a second draw on your Measure O. If we have enough funds that we've gathered up in information, you can always go out and go sell some more bonds. So although you've got the one, you can have a backup one that goes with that. It might be something that we might be looking at towards, June again to go out for a second round of funding. You only gave a small allocation this time around, but we would like to be able to come back with you with a little bit more bandwidth and tell you, here's some other areas that we need to spend some more money on for us to get moving with that. Right now would be a good time for us to do it. Your credit rating is excellent. So, you would get the good leverage. We outperformed in the bond stock market this past summer. So we exceeded our expectations, which were good. That means the ratepayers are going to be paying less and we get more mileage with the funds that come back into our school district. So those are two good things. Like, we want to continue to watch that market and make sure that that market is viable for us for when we go out. Also with interest rates changing, those are some things. I mean, I realize I'm kind of like in like the technical weeds with that. But going back to the conversation, can we set aside funds up to, I would say, $75,000 to $100,000 to be able to do this kind of a project? We can.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, we've got the bond monies, we've got, and we have this desire to update our facilities as much as possible to get them into the best condition for our students moving forward. And doing this assessment of where are our facilities, what is it going to really take, which facilities, I think it's really important for us to look at all of our facilities and see which ones are in the best shape. If we're going to upgrade, then we need to be upgrading the ones that are going to benefit the most from those upgrades. So as we evaluate our properties, there's going to have to be some difficult decisions to be made, I would imagine. But we have to think about the health of our district in terms of facilities, as well as retaining employees and making this a place that our employees are really happy working. And that means paying them as close to getting it to what they're worth. And meeting the challenges of the fact that we are at the bottom of the scale. I mean, I think about, we've given 17.75 over the last 3 years in terms of a percentage increase, and we're still, we still have a long way to go. So how do we look at our facilities, maximize those, and move forward to be able to provide our staff with proper compensation? So, I'm kind of looking at this in terms of, we're talking about assets, asset management and facilities, but the two topics need to really be looked at together because they do support one another.
Yes and no. So,
Okay.
To me, looking at like what do we need to do to be able to maximize our educational outcomes is a little bit different than actually diving into your facilities and looking at what facilities needs. And although you've got a small facility study that was done several years ago, and we did a slight brush off to get ready for Measure O with prioritizing some things, there's a deeper dive that really needs to have to happen with the facilities. And honestly, that's probably going to be the work of having an engineer and architect actually coming in and doing that work. That's actually deeper diving work that needs to be done. Again, it's more money that needs to be spent. You do have funds that will help you do that with Measure O. That's not something that has to come from your general fund.
Right.
And it's something that should come from Measure O. And you should have a full assessment because as Travis has been out there looking at the conditions of our roofs or the conditions of windows or conditions of, the flooring, right? Is the flooring holding up? The condition of the number of portables that we have that have fallen into kind of disrepair that we just need to remove.
Yeah.
I mean, those things need to have a lot more consulting time added to it. And to me, it's a different kind of a consultant, right? And that is going to be a little bit different than what you're talking about. So if you're looking at your facility needs and looking at, what needs to be done with restrooms and infrastructure, that's very different than your educational outcomes. I think that Member Hill was referencing earlier that would help us maximize that particular piece out.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to communicate, and I don't know that I did, was that they're all related. They're all intricately related. And so how do we move forward focusing on the multiple pieces that need to be looked at? Because we can't just go down this path and not think, we can't be thinking with blinders. We've got to be looking wide.
Yeah, I can thinking about some of the conversations that we've had out there with community members and also amongst each other, I think in different scenarios. If you were going to build an incredible makerspace, and let's just use Schilling for example, finding the right location on the Schilling campus to do that is going to be important for us to be able to identify how do we bring that in, what is the overall cost, what's the infrastructure cost, and then what's the ongoing cost to
Right.
be able to maintain that lab, right? And does it need to have a facilitator inside of it to keep that going? Like you need to have a certain champion to be able to make sure that as classrooms come in, that space is well maintained, that things are orderly, right? That there's lessons that are pre-populated and planned for the various age groups that come in.
Yeah, Member Block?
Thank you. And I agree that like definitely some holistic analysis would be useful, but I do think in the short to medium term, like we should try to more narrowly focus in on snow and music because those properties are not currently in any usable shape and they're costing us money currently. And if they could be turned from something that's bleeding the budget right now into something that can be revenue positive and assisting with healthcare or workforce housing or whatever other priorities that any revenue from those properties could go towards, like I just feel like there is some urgency to that because it's currently costing us when it could be generating funds for us, and those properties cannot be used for anything else like in their current shape. Right, they've definitely deteriorated over the last few years, and so I do think we maybe for the short term want to more narrowly focus on those two vacant properties and find a way to turn those from a drag on the budget to something that's going to be beneficial for our students and our staff in some way. And then that kind of bigger process of analyzing the rest of the district can unfold. But I mean, it feels to me like that's the priority, right? If we're paying, what is the number, Superintendent Vakar, how much a month on security for snow?
Yeah, exactly. Big sigh. Big sigh.
It's not just security; it's also the repairs. I'd have to get back with you on that.
Right, it's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot of money. It's a lot.
And I think about what that money could be going to instead.
too. I
and
agree.
what that property could generate for the district. It feels like that's got to be the priority that we really try to get moving on as soon as possible so that we can turn that around as soon as possible.
I will tell you, my team
agree.
through MOT thanks you for bringing up that comment because for sure it's been difficult, right? And it takes time away from other things that we should be focused in. That our MOT team should be over there cleaning up things on a property that we're not even using. It just takes time.
Yeah, I agree. Those are top priorities. Member Hill?
Yeah, I respectfully disagree, right? And that's why when we look at when we're talking about doing a portfolio analysis, right? So if you have a set of stocks in your portfolio, and all you do is you say, you know what, boy, NVIDIA went down this past couple of months, and it's going down big time, and boy, need to sell, right? Need to sell right now. But you're not looking at your entire portfolio, and potentially you're looking at, if you've done a good job in terms of diversifying your portfolio, maybe you want to hang on to NVIDIA because every stock goes through a boom and a bust, right? And so, and my sense is, and I think that before we make any decisions on this, that we need to see some very clear numbers because it's my strong suspicion that in the end of the day, we're not spending that much money on snow. Right, so I need to see the warrants on it, right? Because again, let's just I don't have my calculator in front of me, but if you have one security person there, let's say they're making $50 an hour, right? They're only there at nighttime, pretty much. So and you basically calculate that all out. I will bet you anything that we're not spending more than $100,000 per site around security. That is chump change in the schemes of the things that we're talking about. And the challenge that we will do, if we jump in and we say, sell NVIDIA now, right, we may be making a major mistake because let's say we've sold NVIDIA, but you know what, we were really hoping to buy a new house and we sold the wrong stock. Right, and so we need to look at what are all the things that we want to accomplish, and then we figure out how do we make an adjustment to a portfolio level versus to an individual stock.
So I think it's two different kinds of things, right? And maybe you could maybe assist me with kind of some past history, of good practices that other districts have done. So I do think that you do need to have that portfolio analysis done. That to me is something different then the other piece around surveying the community. Those are two different topics. And then the third one is around what facilities are viable for, us investing in, right? And the three things are like, gonna have to probably be married together in a long-term project, right, as you do your forecasting. But I don't disagree with you. I think that portfolio analysis of everything that we have is extremely important to have. That empowers you with being able to make really good, strong decisions.
Well, and tying back to what President Jones had said, was that all of this is interconnected. It is like a puzzle. And so we may find out, if we do this initial analysis, that that maybe there are certain facilities that we think we were going to apply bond money to, but we ultimately find out that those things are so far gone that the cost of actually going in and upgrading them, it would be the money pit, right? It would be throwing good money after bad.
That's what I was saying.
And so after that analysis may come out, we may actually find there are certain properties that are actually much more desirable to actually get rid of, right? So the cost benefit of keeping them. But the challenge is that the minute that we sell a property, that's it. It's gone, right? And we may find out later on that we thought that maybe snow was like, toast, but we may find out that maybe there was a use that we wanted to put it to. And so I'm just really strongly encouraging the board to say, let's just, kind of take a minute to look at this, and then we can really make decisions fully informed.
Yeah, Members Block and Hill, you're not wrong about your analysis and thinking about the costs that are involved with both snow and music. You were probably spot on the money about what it costs us from a security standpoint, but then there's also the slide that Member Block was talking about, which basically our staff sometimes automatically in the morning has to go directly to one of those sites to help do a cleanup, right? Which means that we're not spending time on our campuses that deserve to have the time spent. So we kind of have that balance that we have to do. And again, we've been looking at some different resources to be able to use in doing that. Either way, it just takes resources away, both in time and in money, ultimately. But in the big scheme of things, it's not that big of a cost when it comes down to the overall cost of what those properties are, which is in the millions.
Yeah, if I recollect, and then I'll call on the other people on the list, that you mentioned something between $30,000 and $40,000 a month in total expenses to just keep those places safe, basically. So, Member Thomas?
Can there be a both and? I'm thinking about Member Block saying, yeah, we have this property sitting there, and it's already been sitting there 2 to 3 years, and we haven't moved on it. And what Member Hill has to say about the need to say, let's not jump in and do something now that we may regret later. What happened with the 2030 plan, I think, was that the timing was bad. We weren't ready to move forward at that point, but now we are ready to move forward because we do have surplus property. We have the Sam Scott Field that no one ever talks about. That's the whole area adjacent to the junior high school or the middle school. There's the Gregor site that's woefully underutilized. How can we quickly take all of that work that's been done ahead of time, so whoever we use to look at and create this mosaic of opportunity for our facilities, he or she doesn't have to start from scratch. We've got a lot of documents. We've got the ADIS report. We got the new demographic study that I assume is in process. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They're not starting from scratch. So how can we satisfy Member Block's idea about, we need to move on these properties now, and Member Hill saying, well, we need a comprehensive look before we make decisions. How can you move forward and quickly have us hone in on our next steps?
Well, why can't, to kind of meet both
I'm sorry,
objectives?
can I follow my list here?
Sorry.
Thanks. Member Block?
Over here to sit with me.
Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm going to sit with my I'll hand the attorney
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So I was not advocating for selling those properties. I was advocating for, maybe thinking about leasing them or transforming them into workforce housing or something like that. So certainly I understand the idea of like just selling a property, getting an influx of cash in the short term and then regretting it later. I totally understand that idea. I wasn't advocating for selling them. I don't particularly think that's a good idea. And I also don't think it's quite a fair analogy to compare the different properties to different, stocks and different corporations because some of those stocks, if you will, are thriving school sites where students would be impacted if there was reshuffling, and there's others that are dormant that nobody is being impacted by at the moment. So I don't think we can treat each of the district properties as if they're different stocks in a portfolio, because two of the stocks in particular, if you will, Snow and Music, have no affiliation with students and staff at all right now. And so they're in a completely different category than the other quote-unquote stocks in the portfolio, which are thriving school sites where if there was any change to occur, that would cause a lot of disruption. I also don't think it's like comparable to selling something at a low point because I don't think those properties are at a low valuation. I mean, I think, in fact, probably the value of those properties has only risen in recent years. So it's not like selling it at a low, and I'm not advocating for selling them at all, but I don't think that we should equate all of the different properties and treat them as the same when some have schools on them currently operating and some don't. Like when you have a school site that is vacant, I think that like makes it a completely different category of discussion. And I just, it's hard to see like any use for those properties in even the long term other than leasing them out or transforming them into something like housing. Like the idea of using those two schools, which are in such a state of disrepair, as a school site, like it seems pretty far-fetched to me. So I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about and also talk about why I think we shouldn't treat them as part of a portfolio with the existing school sites because they really are separate now that they are no longer in operation as school sites.
Member Aguiano.
Thank you, fellow board members, for sharing these great points. I mean, it's really something that we have to also look into is what are our neighboring districts doing with properties, or if they've gone through scenarios like these, how are they lifting themselves up? How are they progressing away from that? Or what are the alternatives? What are things that they're doing that they're being successful at it? Creating affordable housing, right? How do they take that approach? How are they communicating this information with all of the community partners? So really just to explore different ways that we could take a field trip to a different district. For us to have a better idea of what things, obviously every district is really different, right? But unique, but to bring back things that go ahead and really spark an interest on how can we go ahead and better take a different approach on this.
Member Hill.
Yeah, and coming back to what Member Thomas was saying, so I think how we can bridge the gap is we just fast track a study, and when Dutra did their study, they did it in like 4 or 5 months, but I think what we want to just really be careful about is even if we don't sell Snow and Music, and we decide we're going to use them for some other purpose. But until we've actually done the analysis, I mean, so like we don't even know how much it would cost for us to pay for health care if that were an objective. And we could very well find if we just zero in on those properties and we do a lease back that maybe it's not enough. Or same thing with workforce housing, where is that the ideal site? Or is maybe taking some of the, we have those massive fields out in the junior high school that are not being used. Would that be a better location, right? So all I'm saying is that let's see if we can fast track the analysis, and it may very well be at the end that maybe Snow and Music are the ideal things to move on, and then we can move with intention and purpose. But I just want us to maybe take a breath and just make sure that, again, whatever our goals are, that the sale of the properties is going to achieve those goals.
I'm ready. Okay. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for having me today. I did just to address maybe some of the earlier questions and comments about how to bridge the gap between sites that maybe you would get going on sooner if you were going to form a committee or if you were going to start looking at them for disposition purposes that are closed school sites. We have had districts that if a school has been sitting vacant for some time and they are expending substantial resources to maintain as well as on security and other things, are in a similar boat, and they will bring those properties under 7-Eleven committee's purview to get the review process going, while on a parallel track doing community input sessions and receiving input on what is the community's view of how those sites should be utilized, and that can be part and parcel of what they assess. But I think this more holistic approach that you all are talking about and trying to work through, because there are ultimate goals that the board has and wants to pursue and needs some data around that, I don't think that, I think working through that initially to get some data and get some data points and information, and then working through what the next steps would be, maybe starting with the closed school sites and then adding more to the committee's purview as you're moving along, is another strategy, and I've seen that utilized at other districts as well. But I do think it's helpful to have that initial legwork done so that with the goals that the board has, it can then inform, okay, how do you strategically plan to utilize the sites for the district's benefit? I will remind the board that there are alternatives to surplusing. So the 7-Eleven committee review and recommendations would be required if the school district was interested in selling or long-term leasing under the surplus statutes. If you're not surplusing, which is not required for employee housing, for example, long-term leasing under the joint occupancy statutes, for short-term leasing, then you don't necessarily need to form or have input from a 7-Eleven committee to take those steps. You can also get moving on that process without having to go through the longer process of having a 7-Eleven committee review and provide recommendations. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't be getting community input along a parallel track. That would still be recommended and is always a good approach when you're assessing what to do with your sites.
Okay, next steps. Let's talk about, so I think what I've heard is that we do think it's a good idea to get a consultant to talk about the survey work that needs to be done in the community. I think we're all in agreement with that from what I can kind of tell. Yes.
Yes.
It would help if you would give me some authority to be able to go out there and go find that consultant and work with the committee to bring that consultant forward. I think we could have that done by the middle part of January. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do we have the ability to authorize that, or is this just a study session today?
No,
Like, could
yeah, we can't authorize it.
we can't authorize that.
I mean,
today.
we can ask her to go for a search. I mean, we can, as a
You can
consensus.
give me direction.
Right, we can give her direction. But what I would suggest, Superintendent, is that maybe you find a couple and maybe they come in and give us a presentation.
Yeah, like I said, I would probably do some sort of a request to ask them to do that for us.
Yeah. Is everyone in agreement that that's a good direction? Okay.
Some of the other things that staff and I have been working on, just to kind of share with you and that we'd like to be able to bring back to you in January, is we are looking at by school site, what the demographics have looked like over there for enrollment data. So you'll be getting an enrollment data report from staff in January at the January 20th meeting. So be ready for that. We'll be looking at each school site. You'll be able to see the last 5-year history, I think is what we're looking at, and then projections for next year. So we'll be sharing that data with you as well, so you have that as we continue to move forward. I think that's going to be important data for you to have by our school sites. So we're working on that. I can tell you the HR team has been in conversation about what is the cost of healthcare, and we may be going out for a consultant to be able to help us with that, so that we can look at is it beneficial for us to go into a JPA? Are we even marketable for a JPA, since we haven't been in the insurance business for a good chunk of our staff? I actually think we are. And that actuary study that Ms. Thomas mentioned earlier is really important for us as we look at that, because of the data around the age of our employees will have an impact on that work. So I'm working with, there's only a couple companies out there that do that work. Staff will probably make that selection. It'll be probably within my purview to be able to do that particular piece underneath my authority. So But we definitely need to get that rolling. That's going to be important. Mike's had a lot of work that he's done with some of those groups out there as well. And so I know we've had a conversation about what can we do to structure that, and then probably have like a subgroup of our employee group members that would be part of that. That would be helping us in looking at that healthcare element of it. So internally, we've got work that we've got to do as a team to be able to bring to you so that you can make some decisions as well. Does that make sense?
And I think that would be a great thing to get our new CBO involved in, right? In terms
Absolutely.
of costs. So, and we might even be able to save a little bit of money on the consulting costs, for her to do some of the financial analysis.
Probably not, because really what you're looking at is you're going to have to figure out what is our marketability as far as going out in the market for healthcare. It's actually a whole different kind of science. I actually got to do this over in Glendora. So as we went back out there for market to figure out like what we had to do, they were paying really high rates and not getting the best benefits, quite frankly. And it took bringing in an expert to be able to help us be able to sit there and hold on that. But it took a lot of conversation with the two labor partners to sit there and have those discussions and bring them together to see whether or not they were going to be independent in what we were doing, or whether or not we could bring it together collectively to be able to get better bang for our dollar. And so sometimes you have to have those discussions. CSEA's had long-term healthcare out here, where our teachers and our leadership group has not had healthcare access. And so bringing them in as to whether or not they would fit underneath the umbrella of what is currently being done with what CSEA has, or whether or not we'd look at something entirely different, is a whole different approach. It would probably take about 6 months to really do that study in depth, but I'd like to get started on that so we can be ready to go, so that as you start to make these decisions, that's happening in tandem. But it's a lot of work that has to be done, and it's a lot of meetings that occur internally for us to be able to get there.
Okay.
So those are a couple big things of work that I would like to have staff embark upon as we help and support you in navigating these decisions, so that you have that information. Other ideas?
Other ideas, comments? I think I just didn't click you off the last time. Okay. All right. Do you need anything else from us?
No, I think we're good. I think we can move forward with those direction pieces. Thank you very much. I'll be working very closely with the committee, and I really appreciate your time here on a Saturday. Thank you for coming out and spending time with us here on a Saturday. We appreciate that. We've had a very busy day. A lot of things have happened today.
Yeah.
And so, President Jones, if you and I could just speak maybe afterwards about some next steps. I want to make sure that I reach out to both of our search firm groups that were here, let them know kind of what the outcomes were from today's meeting, and then thank you, board, for your time.
Okay. Anything else? All right. On that note, I will adjourn the meeting at 12:23. Thank you all.